Okay, guys. So today, now that we're finished the listening section, we're going to be moving on to the speaking section now. And we'll remember that the speaking section is the third section of the test. Remember that it's also, just like the listening and just like the reading, it's over 30 points. And also remember that it's probably the shortest part of the test because it lasts about 25 minutes in total. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be seeing theory and practice of the 4 different questions that we have in the speaking, because we have 4 of them. And remember that what you guys will be doing in the speaking is basically that you will have to speak to a microphone, to the computer microphone, and they will record what you say. Okay, guys? Do you have any questions before we start today's class? All right. So, speaking section. First of all, let's talk about the structure of the speaking section. Pretty simple. In the speaking, you guys will only have 4 questions. Okay, there's only 4 questions. But each question is different than the other. Each question has a different format, has a different timing. You have to do something different for each question. So we're going to be seeing the 4 of them. Now, in the speaking section, we have both independent and integrated questions. What does it mean? When do we say that a question is independent, and when do we say that it's an integrated question? So basically, independent questions in the TOEFL test are those that don't require for you to read or listen to anything before you answer the question. So basically, these questions, you can answer them in the way you want, because it's about you. It's about yourself, your experiences, your opinions, whatever you want to say. However, the integrated questions, which are the last 3 questions of the speaking section, are supposed to be like a way to integrate different skills. So you're not just going to be speaking, but you also have to read something before, or you have to hear something before you speak. So it's not just about speaking skills, it's also about listening and reading skills in the integrated part. Okay, guys? So in those questions, you're not supposed to talk about yourselves. You guys have to report something that you read or something that you heard. You have to summarize that. So that is the difference between independent and integrated questions here. All right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start today with the first question, the independent question. And we're going to be also taking a look at an overview of the speaking section in terms of how they evaluate the speaking section. Okay, guys? Another thing that I wanted to say, we can call these questions or tasks. Okay, so if I say task 1, you know that it's the first question. Task 2 is the second, task 3, task 4. All right, we only have 4 of them. Is that okay so far? Are you guys, do you have any questions before we go with the first one? Okay, then.
It's okay so far.
Okay, Walter, thank you. So, what we're going to do, remember that listening and reading, we've done listening and reading so far. And remember that in listening and reading, every question was multiple choice, right? So you had an answer that was correct, and you had another answer that was incorrect. And it was pretty simple, right? If you got it correct, then you get the point, but if you don't, then you don't get any points. But in the speaking section, it's way more difficult to understand how they evaluate this section, because to be honest, nobody knows for sure. There's no such thing as a right or a wrong answer, right? They will ask you a question and you have to answer in your own way. And obviously, everybody is different, so everybody's gonna answer those questions in different ways. So how do we know how they evaluate this section? How do we know what they want, what they're looking for? So basically, they have PDF. The ETS officially has published the speaking rubrics. So if you guys search for TOEFL speaking rubric, then you will find the first result that pops up. That is the PDF. That explains exactly what or how they evaluate the speaking section. It explains how the speaking section is scored. Okay, guys? Let's see, I'm going to share this link with you guys in case you want to check it out. But either way, we'll see a summary. Okay? Please give me a second. You're right back. Okay, guys. Sorry. So as I was telling you, they have this available for everybody to read, and it's technically a description of what it needs, what your response needs to have in order to get either a 4 levels response, a 3-level response, 2 or 1 or a 0. As you can see, they don't really evaluate your responses on a scale from 0 to 30, as you may imagine. But instead, what they do is they evaluate each response from the 4 questions on a scale from 0 to 4, and then they get an average of the 4 questions. Let's say that you get 3.5, and then they weight those scores and they convert them into the final score, right? Which is going to be on a scale of 0 to 30. So let's say if you have a 4, then that means that you must have around 28 to 30. If you have 3.5, that must mean that you have like 25, 26. So depending on how much you get in the four different questions, they will average your scores and they will weight your final score. Okay, guys? But we're not going to read that, it's pretty long. What we're going to do is take a look at the summary of that PDF. What do you guys need to get a good score? I'm going to tell. First thing, they will be evaluating your responses based on 3 different categories. We have topic development as the first, we have delivery as the second, and we have language use. Okay, topic development, delivery, and language use. So let's see what this means. Topic development pretty much refers to what you say. It refers to the content of your response. So what do I mean by that? Your response needs to be coherent. It needs to make sense. So if they ask you, do you prefer rock music or let's say jazz, then you need to actually answer the question without going off topic, without saying something that doesn't make sense. You need to answer the question coherently. You also need to be concise. That means that you can be redundant. You can be repeating and going over the same ideas over and over again. You need to make sure that you are saying like you're limiting your response to what you have to say, right? To what is necessary to say without over explaining things too much. And also you need to make good use of the time. They give you a specific time for each response, and you need to accommodate your response to the time that you have. So let's say in the first question, they're going to give you 45 seconds. That means that you need to use those 45 seconds the best you can. So you need to have a short introduction. It has to be short, right? If you spend, like, say, 30 minutes or 30 seconds just in your introduction, that's not a wise way to use your time. So you need to use your time properly. Also, supporting development, which basically means how deep your response is. If you just say, I prefer jazz, without explaining why, without giving examples, without justifying your responses, then you're not really developing and supporting your response the way you should, right? You're not actually explaining things the way that you should. It's not an in-depth response. And then finally, you have connections and structure, which has to do with basically how you're connecting your ideas, how your ideas are flowing and they're progressing. You need to use a couple of transition words. You need to use appropriate connectors. So if you're going to show contrast, then you need to use maybe however or but or nevertheless. If you're going to show addition, you need to use a transition for that. So how you connect your ideas and how easily they flow. And that is the content. Then you have delivery. So maybe Fernando, could you please read these 2 bullet points that we have for delivery?
Okay, teacher. Delivery, pronunciation and intonation, stress, articulation, intelligibility, flow and speech, fluidity, pauses, filler words.
Okay, thank you so much. So delivery has to do with the way that you speak, how you speak, how you deliver your response, right? That's why it's delivery. So obviously, it's not just about saying the right things, but it's saying it in the right way. So you have to be able to pronounce the words. I won't say like a native speaker because that doesn't matter. Everybody has a different accent. Remember that English is such a wide language that is so spread, that is spoken in so many different parts of the world. Even in one country, I mean, even in America, let's say in the US, like people from different regions, from different states have different accents. So it's fine if you have an accent. It's fine if you have a Latin accent as well. It's fine if you don't sound like a native speaker and they can tell that you are from a different country, because everybody who takes this test is somebody who has learned the language, it's a foreign language, right? So no problem there. The only thing is that you guys need to make sure that what you're saying is understandable, that you are pronouncing the words and speaking in a way that anybody who speaks English could understand what you're saying. That's the only condition, okay? It's not about sounding like a native, but it's about being intelligible. That means making yourself clear. Everybody should be understand what you're saying without putting effort into it, okay, guys? And then intonation, which is also necessary. You know that one way of showing fluency is the way that you intonate things. Because, once that you have an advanced level, then you start like realizing that intonation goes beyond the words. If you stress a word in a sentence, let's say you say, I have never tried such a good sushi, let's say. So you're stressing that word never, right? To emphasize the idea. So intonating correctly, making a non-linear response, raising your voice sometimes, lowering it sometimes, making appropriate pauses, stressing the appropriate words shows fluency. Okay, guys, and it helps you communicate your message more effectively. So that is important as well. And obviously articulation. So you need to articulate as much as you can. And I'd even dare to say that you need to exaggerate a little. So overpronounce the B's, let's say, overpronounce the S, because sometimes, or the T's, for example, sometimes some students have correct grammar, but the way that they speak make it sound like they are making grammar errors. For example, I remember that I had a student who was from Uruguay, and he used to have a problem with pronouncing the S in the words. So it will be like, maybe he would say something like, the student state instead of the student states, not because he didn't know that he needed to use the S, but because he had a problem pronouncing it. So that is something that can happen as well. So make sure that you articulate the words and letters in a way that they are easily recognizable, right? Also, let's say the EDs. Maybe you say, so I work in this company 2 years ago. Maybe you have the correct grammar, but maybe you're not pronouncing the ED correctly, worked. So it's going to sound like you're making a grammar error, right? So be careful with those details. Also, how fluent you are, whether you make too many pauses, if you use too many filler words, that can also affect your score. And finally, we got language use. So perhaps, Walter, could you read these 2 bullet points we have?
Okay, teacher. Language use. Vocabulary usage, appropriacy and range, grammar, correct grammar usage, and grammar priority.
Okay, thank you so much, Walter. So language use is related to the tools that you use, to how you use the language pretty much. And it's obviously going to be linked very closely to vocabulary and to grammar. Vocabulary showing, if you guys want to get a top score, then you need to show top vocabulary, right? You need to make sure that you show advanced vocabulary. So it's about the range, but it's also about how appropriate the vocabulary you're using is. Let's say that you're talking about relationships, and instead of saying, so my friends, instead of saying my friends broke up, you say my friends finished their relationship. So you are making yourself understandable by saying my friends finished their relationship, but you're not using the appropriate vocabulary, right? When you could have said my friends split, my friends broke up, my friends ended the relationship. So you need to sound natural, you need to sound, and you need to use the words that are appropriate to the context. If you're talking about business, you're not going to say things, you're going to say products. If you're talking about business again, you're not going to say, let's say, people who buy things, you're going to say customers or consumers. You're not going to say, let's say, I don't know, the person who sells something, you're going to sell the salesman, right? So you need to use that appropriate vocabulary according to the context. And finally, grammar, which is related to not making too many grammar errors. Everybody makes grammar mistakes. Nobody's grammar is completely perfect, at least, I mean, not even native's grammar. But if you're constantly showing that you have the same problem with one specific grammar point, then it can be a problem. So try to know yourself, know what grammar points you have to review for speaking, and review them. I'm gonna give you guys feedback, and I'm gonna tell you, please review embedded questions. So I won't really be explaining that grammar point, but I will tell you what grammar points to review. So you have to, on your own, try to review that grammar point, try to practice it, try to make sure that you get it right, okay? And finally, grammar variety, which has to do with same thing as vocabulary, right? Showing that you have mastered different grammar structures, not sticking to the same grammar all the time, having maybe compound sentences, conditional sentences, different tenses, that helps as well. Okay, guys? And that's basically it. I know that I've been speaking for too long, but I would say it's really important that you guys understand how they evaluate your responses and what they want, so that you guys can practice on your own as well, so that you can ask yourself these questions when you're practicing and evaluating yourself. So record yourself when you're speaking and ask yourself these questions. Have I used the time wisely? Have I given enough details and examples? Have I connected my ideas well? Have I don't know, used the correct, have I intonated things correctly? Have I made too many pauses, used too many filler words? Have I used the appropriate vocabulary? Could I maybe use better vocabulary for this context? Have I made grammar errors, and what grammar errors have I made? Right? So you can ask yourself these questions when you are evaluating yourselves, and that way you're going to make progress. Because otherwise, you don't know what to do, right? You don't know where to work. So we'll be practicing, and I'll be giving you feedback. We have plenty of time for the speaking. But in general, this is what they want. This is what they're looking for. And if you have all of these, then you can get a score. Okay, guys? Do you have any questions so far? Is this okay?
Yeah, teacher, thank you.
Okay, guys. So enough for now. What we're going to do is move on to the first question. Task 1 of the speaking section, which is called the independent question. Okay, guys? So I won't tell you exactly how the structure works, but I will show you an example so that you see how your screen will look like, what you have to do, the instructions and everything, like the real test. So let me see. I'm going to play this video for you guys, and it's basically a sample for this question.
Number 1. In this question, you will be asked, Number 1. In this question, you will be asked to give your opinion about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak. State whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. Then explain your reasons, using specific details in your explanation. Learning through online courses is more effective than learning in the traditional classroom setting.
Begin to prepare your response after the beep. Begin speaking after the beep.
Okay, guys. So that's how it's going to be. Initially, you have the instructions that tell you that for this question, they will ask something about your opinion on something, and they tell you that they will give you 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to answer the question. And that's exactly how it works. As you can see, you will get a question on your screen, and they will read the question for you. There's going to be a narrator that reads the question for you. After they read the question, they will give you 15 seconds for you to prepare your response. During this preparation time, you can do whatever you want. They won't be recording anything. That's not gonna count. So you can say whatever you like, no problem. And after, they will obviously give you a timer, right? So for the preparation time and for the response time, you will have a timer on the screen showing how much time you have left. And then after the 15 seconds are over, they will give you 45 so that you can answer this question. And you have to begin speaking as the narrator says, right? Begin speaking after the beep. You hear a beep, and then you have to start speaking and answering the question, and they will start recording what you say. And then you have 45 seconds to answer the question, and they stop recording, and that's it. That's the end of this question. Guys? Is it okay? Is it clear what you guys have to do for this task?
Yes, teacher. Clear.
All right. Now, by the way, during the time that you're speaking, you will have the question on your screen, so you don't have to worry about memorizing it, okay? It'll be there. What you have when you're speaking is the question and the time, and your notes, if you have taken notes, and of course your mind. So you have to make the best out of all of those elements and tools that you have. But now let's take a look at what you have to do. How do you answer this question? What do you guys do? Let's see. So, first of all, this is the question that we have, right? Let's see. That wasn't the question. This was the question? No, it wasn't that. Let's work on the same question that we had here. It was learning through online courses is more effective than learning in the traditional classroom setting. Right, I'm going to type it down. Do you agree? right? It was something like that. Use specific details in your explanation. It was explain your reasons using specific details in your explanation. Okay, guys, perfect. This was the question. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Learning through online courses is more effective than learning in the traditional classroom setting. As you guys can see, this is a closed question. What does it mean to have if we have a closed question? It means that you have limited options. You have very limited ways in which you can answer this question. In this case, we only have 2 ways to answer this question. Can anyone tell me what are the 2 options that we have?
Agree or disagree with the statement that learning through online courses is more effective than learning in traditional classroom.
Exactly, perfect. So we only have 2 options. We can say that we agree, and if we say that we agree, we're saying that online courses are more effective. And we have the second option that I'm going to highlight on another color. That says that if we disagree, we're going to say that we don't think that online courses are more effective, that probably traditional courses are more effective, right? So those are our only 2 options. We agree, we think that online courses are more effective, or we disagree and we think that traditional is probably more effective. We only have 2 options, and that's always going to be the case for this question. You will always have 2 options. Now, it's not always going to be do you agree or disagree, but at the end of the day, it will be the same. So this is just one type of question that we have, agree or disagree, but there are others as well, and I want to show you. Here are the question types. The first one is the one that we have. Do you agree or disagree with this sentence? Learning through online courses is more efficient than in the traditional way. That's the one we had, agree or disagree. We have 2 options. We agree that online is better, we disagree that it's better. But you also have a second type, which is preference. Preference asks you for your preference. So do you prefer taking online courses or do you prefer taking traditional courses? So as you guys can see, even though it's phrased differently, at the end of the day, it's the same idea. You have 2 options, online courses or traditional courses, and you need to say which one you prefer. And finally, we have the good idea type, which is the one where they ask you what you think about something. But at the end of the day, it's still the same because you still have options and you have to choose one. Some universities are now offering full online programs and eliminating the option of having traditional face-to-face programs. Do you think that it's a good idea that students take online classes instead of traditional classes? So even though it's again phrased differently, it's the same. Online versus traditional, right? You have the same options, it's the same question. So these are the question types that you guys can have. But it doesn't matter which one you get, you have to answer it in the same way. So we're going to see how. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, guys, after you get the question, we said that you'll get 15 seconds to prepare. What are you going to do during these 15 seconds? Not much, because it's not a lot, but mainly you're going to think of your response. You're going to plan your response. How do you do that? By first choosing a side, saying your opinion, answering the question. Sorry, guys. What do you think? Do we say that we agree that online is better, or do we say that we disagree and that maybe traditional is better? What would you guys think? We agree or disagree?
Teacher, I disagree with the statement. Learning through online courses is not more effective than learning in the traditional classroom. I think because it's way easier to distract yourself. Yeah, as simple as that to understand.
Perfect, Walter. Thank you so much. I love the fact that you gave me a reason and it was a simple, short reason, very concise. Okay, guys, so that is exactly what you guys have to do when you're preparing during those 15 seconds. Think about your opinion, think about your position, whether you agree or disagree with this. Think about at least one reason. I'm not saying just one reason, but at least one. So if you want, you can think of two if you have time. So it's always better to have two just in case. So maybe can we think of another reason why online courses are not more effective aside from the fact that you distract yourself? What would be another reason?
Another reason could be that as you distract yourself, if you can't focus on the topics that you are going through your class, your online class, you won't learn, or at least you won't learn in the same way. You won't keep that knowledge.
Okay, yes, exactly. Perfect. Thank you so much. So yes, what you're saying is true. Now, to be honest, I wouldn't consider that reason as an option, because when you guys are thinking of your reasons or your reason, if you're going to give two, I mean, when you speak, I'm going to get ahead a little bit. When you answer this question, you have two options. If you want, you can give one reason, and if you have more time, you can give another. But you need to make sure that if you give two reasons, the two of them are completely unrelated. That means that they have nothing to do with each other. In your case, it was more like a cause and effect situation rather than an addition, right? You were saying, so since you get distracted, then you won't learn. It's cause and effect. You get distracted, so you won't learn. But we need a relationship of addition. We need to add a different reason. Because if you're going to go with something that is related to your first reason, then it may appear like you're being a little bit redundant, okay? So you need to think of something entirely different than getting distracted. Aside from the fact that you get distracted, what can be another reason why online is not more effective?
Teacher, maybe a reason could be that you can interact in a better way with your teacher and your classmates.
Exactly, perfect. And that is great because it's entirely different from what we already found. Perfect. And that's all you guys have to do when you're preparing. And to be honest, it's all you have time to. 15 seconds is just enough for you to think of your position and at least one reason, or if you want to. Okay, guys? And that's it. Those are 15 seconds that are already gone. Any questions so far? Okay, guys. So how do you actually answer this question now? What do we do during those 45 seconds that we have to speak? Let's see. We have a template for that. So remember that you have how many seconds to speak?
"45 seconds."
45. Great, thanks. 45 seconds to speak. So what we're going to do is during the first 7 to 8 seconds, what you guys are going to do is you're going to give a short introduction where you're directly going to answer the question. Answer the question as directly as you can. What do I mean by directly? I mean, use the same verb. If the question was, do you agree or disagree? You use the same verb to answer. You say, I agree or I disagree. If the question is, do you prefer this or that? You say, I prefer. If the question is, do you think it's a good idea or not? You say, I think it's a good idea. Okay, always use the same verb in your introduction. And remember, we said the introduction should be no more than 7 to 8 seconds. If you spend 15 seconds, which is something very common, even though you may not believe it, that's already 1/3 of your response. Are you organizing your time effectively? Are you managing your time well if you use 15 seconds out of 45? No, you're not, because that's 1/3. You need to spend at most 8 seconds there. So I strongly agree that online courses are more effective, or I strongly disagree that online courses are more effective. Now, when you guys have this type of question, agree or disagree, make sure that you always mention a little bit of the statement. Remember that this is going to be on your screen, so you don't have to memorize it. You can just read. But you need to mention it. Don't just say, I agree, or I disagree, and leave it there. Mention a little bit, because otherwise it can be a little bit confusing for the listener. Okay, make sure that your position is straightly forward mentioned. Okay, so how would you start? I strongly disagree that online courses are more effective, and that's it. Okay, that's introduction done. What's next? You give your reason. When you give your reason, you guys need to be concise. That's very important. That means don't over-explain things that don't need an explanation. Of course, there are going to be cases in which you need to explain things, but there are going to be other cases in which you don't have to explain things. For example, let's say that we disagree, or that we agree. And we say, I agree that online courses are more efficient because you save time. Do I need to explain that argument? Probably not, right? Something simple to understand. You save time with online courses. I don't really need to explain things. I don't need to be, you save a lot of time that you can use in other activities, and saving time is important so that you can do other stuff that you like. So it's good to save time, right? If I go something like that, then what I'm doing is I'm not being concise. I'm being redundant. I'm going in circles, repeating the idea. So I'm not really having a good response. But maybe if you have a more complex reason, then you can explain it. If it needs explanation, then explain it. But if it doesn't, then don't try to just say whatever you want just to fill the time. Okay, don't do that. So be short, be concise, be clear, be direct, and be also simple. I don't know why, but I've had some students that for some reason wanted to give very complex reasons. So maybe they were talking about online courses. So they maybe started talking about the brain and stimuli and how our brain works, how we process information, or let's say how it damages our eyes, how the screen damages our eyes, and they start talking about science. Don't do that. Make it simple, like the reasons we thought about are great. Saving time, saving money, getting distracted, learning, concentrating, those reasons, simple reasons, okay? In my case, I had a pretty simple reason, and I got nearly a perfect score. So it's really not a matter of how complex your response is, but it's how well done it is. Okay, guys? So I have a short reason. I'm not telling you exactly how much time to use here because it depends on whether you have to explain it or not. But I'd say from 10 to maybe 20, 25 seconds, depending on whether you need explanations or not. And finally, after you have gone with your reason, this is key. And this is something that a lot of students forget. And this is something that the question said, give details. You need to give at least one example where you're going to provide specific details as the question said. So if you said that you save time, then give me examples of how much time you save, the details. Give me an example of one time where you took an online course and you saved a lot of time. How much time did you save? What course was this? When did you take this course? What was it about? What was your grade? So give those details, give names, numbers, be specific, okay, with your example. So I'm going to give you guys an example because this is all you need, okay? That's all you need. That's the basic things that you need to have: an introduction, a reason, and an example. Obviously, the example, you're going to do it in the rest of the time that you have. Okay, guys? Introduction, reason, and example. That's all you need. Is that okay so far? Do you have any questions? Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a sample response so that you see what I mean. And I'm going to try to use the reasons that you guys thought about. Okay, so that you see how I manage my time, the things I say, things I don't, how my example is, and so forth. Okay, so here's the timer. You guys can see how much time I'm using. Let's see. I strongly disagree that online courses are more efficient. Since when you take an online course, you're more easily distracted by the things around you. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic 2 years ago, my university was only offering online courses. I remember this particular course that I took, my biology class, that was in the afternoon when my siblings already came home from school, my little siblings. And I remember that I used to get distracted with them. I used to play with them sometimes while I was having class or while I was listening to class, and I didn't learn as much as I could, right? So it was a pretty simple response, simple ideas, and I tried to follow the structure that I gave you, right? I had my short introduction, which was about 5-6 seconds. I had a short reason that I didn't explain too much, and I had a short example as well that contained specific details, when COVID-19 pandemic, what class, biology, and another thing that I forgot to say, your example has to be related and has to illustrate and reflect what you said in your reason, okay? So if your reason was that you get distracted easily, you need to illustrate that with an example in the last part. If your reason is that you have more chances to interact with other students in traditional classes, your example has to be related. You can't mix ideas, right? If your reason is distractions and your example is about social life, then it wouldn't make any sense. You have to be focusing on one idea. Okay, guys? So that's just one response, one way to answer this. There are many ways. I'm going to give you another example, okay, in a different way so that you guys can see. I strongly disagree that online courses are more efficient since you get easily distracted with online courses. For instance, you can get distracted on your phone, on social media, chatting with friends, or even with things from home, or the TV maybe. Furthermore, when you take online classes, you miss the opportunity of interacting with other students and having an active social life. In traditional classrooms, on the other hand, you have the chance of having debates with other students, of going and doing activities with them, of getting to know them better, which is something you don't in online classes. Right, so in this case, I had two reasons, as you guys can see, and I also had kind of two examples. Actually, I only had one, right? But my ideas were a little bit more broad. I didn't have a personal example, but instead I had a general example, right? I talked about the things that you can get distracted with while having online classes. I said you can be on your phone, you can watch the TV, you can distract yourself with social media and stuff. And I had another reason, which I explained a little bit, and I contrasted it with traditional classes. So both responses were equally well. The thing is not about how many reasons you have. As long as you have one reason in one example, you're good to go. But some students tend to have some extra time. So if that is your case and you usually have some extra time that you can use, maybe you can try going with another reason. So it depends. It depends on how much time you have. Everything depends on the time that you have. If you still have more time, you can go with a short conclusion. You can say, these are the main reasons why I feel this way. These are the main reasons why I prefer online courses over traditional classes, if you have more time. So accommodate your response to the time that you have. You need to improvise sometimes, but essentially that's what you need. An introduction where you directly answer the question, a reason that's concise and short and related, and an example that illustrates your reason, giving specific details. Okay, guys? What do you think now? Do you have any questions now that I've also gave you my sample responses, that you've heard me answer this question? What do you think? Any comments, any questions?
Everything's clear here, teacher.
Okay, Walter.
Yes,
great.
teacher, everything's clear.
Nice. So as you guys can see, there are different ways to answer, and I don't want you all to try to do the same because everybody's different. So what we're going to do is tomorrow we're going to start practicing. The good thing is that given that this question is so broad and it has so many topics and stuff, we're going to practice, and I'll give you guys some suggestions. Some students are better off with just one reason and one example. Other students need to have 2 reasons. Some students work better with personal examples, the one that I gave in the beginning, right? During the COVID-19 pandemic, my university was only offering online classes, and I was forced to take this biology class where I got distracted really easily. So that is a really good thing, especially for advanced students. Why? Because it allows you to use more grammar resources. Look at my tenses. When I gave that personal example, I was like, my university was offering. I took this class. I used to get easily distracted. I have used 3 different grammar structures, or 3 different grammar tenses. Used to, past continuous was offering, and simple past, I took. I can even use a 3rd conditional. I can say, if I had taken a traditional class, I would have learned more. 3rd condition. So when you guys give past examples, past experiences, it allows you to show more grammar. But there are some students who struggle with the grammar. Maybe you still are having problems with the conjugation of the verbs. So obviously, if you guys have a problem with conjugating verbs in the past, you're going to try to avoid that, right? You're not going to go with an example in the past. You're going to try to have more general details. So you can go with a general example the way that I did in my second answer. So it totally depends on the student, okay? I don't want you guys to force yourself to do something in a way that is not going to work for you. There are many strategies. Both responses are equally valid. The important thing is that you try to accomplish the things we talked about. So, like a good delivery, good content, appropriate content, and good language use as well. Any questions so far?
No,
Okay.
teacher.
And as I was telling you, we also have other types of questions that we're also going to see tomorrow, because it's not always agree or disagree. Sometimes it's preference. Everything's still the same, but you have to start, your introduction is going to change. Instead of saying, I strongly agree, you're going to say, I strongly prefer taking online courses, right? You use the same verb as the question. If it's a good idea type, instead of saying, I strongly agree, you're going to say, I completely think that it's a great idea for students to take online classes, right? So you use the same verb as the question in order to have a direct answer. Okay, guys, so tomorrow we're going to be practicing. We're also going to talk about the topics. By the way, the topics that you have in this question are the same that I already gave you the vocabulary for. Remember that I gave you that vocabulary that was about these different topics for the TOEFL, like education, work, relationships, recreation, travel, technology, environment. So these are the same topics that you will have in this question. These questions are always going to be about these simple topics, everyday topics. Okay, so they're going to ask you about your work life, about whether you prefer, the question we had was about education, for example, right? Relationships, let's say, maybe, do you think it's a good idea to date someone before, or to live with someone before getting married, for example? That could be a kind of question. Recreation and travel, maybe, is it better to travel alone or with someone else? Lifestyle and health, probably diets, maybe working out. Do you prefer to work out in the morning or in the afternoon, let's say? Technology, do you prefer laptop computers or smartphones? Finance decisions, maybe. Do you think it's a good idea to save money or not? Environment, global issues, maybe. Like, do you think that it's a good idea for cars not to be allowed in the city centers? Social, political issues, maybe. These are very rare, but it can happen. So do you think that, let's say, the government should rule for more than 4 years? So we're going to be practicing with different question types about different topics, but in general, the vocabulary that I already sent you will be useful for this question. Okay, guys, so make sure you check it out and make sure that you read about these topics. Okay, guys. So what do you think now? Any questions, any comments before we go?
No, teacher. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys. So please don't forget to fill out today's daily survey before you go. And I will be seeing you guys tomorrow in class, and we'll be practicing question 1 of the speaking section that we saw today.
Thank you, teacher. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Okay.
teacher. Have a good night.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Bye, teacher.
Bye-bye.